sold my Porsche Boxster. So I was going back and forth on whether or not to sell my Porsche Boxster. It had a few issues that popped up, and I'll get into that a little bit more later in the video. But one thing led to another, and eventually it made sense to sell it, unfortunately. I had originally planned on keeping it long term, putting a 3.4 liter 996 engine into it eventually and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes it's just time to say goodbye, and it was the right time, unfortunately. So here are the 3 reasons why I ended up selling my Porsche Boxster. Reason number 1, the water pump. It looked like the water pump gave out, but it could have been even more. So here's the thing is I had noticed a leak. What happened one day is I drove to my day job, and out of the air outlet to evacuate hot air out of the engine, I noticed some smoke coming out of it, or it could have been steam. Well, it's not uncommon for these cars to have fluid leak on the headers or the manifold, and it produces steam, or it could be burning if it's more of oil. Got it home, didn't drive it for a few weeks. It's one reason you haven't seen any of my videos if you keep up for a couple weeks. So after further investigation, got it up under the car, had to take panels off and stuff, saw fluid all over the place. Now, I also noticed that the coolant was leaking. So I checked the coolant, I checked the oil, because first thing is it a head gasket? Fortunately, there was no mixing in the oil, no mixing in the coolant that I could see. And I had just done an oil change about 2 months ago, so it would have to be fairly new that the head gasket blew after getting up under the car. So it could have been the water pump, the thermostat could leak, could have been a whole host of hoses, and it could have been the oil cooler. So my plan was to replace them all, right? When you're in there, it's the kind of while you're in there, drain the coolant. Hey, yeah, might as well replace everything that potentially could be a problem. I did rule out the power steering fluid, because in that area it could also be power steering. And here's reason number 2, to help me decide if I should keep it long term. So it was going to be a couple of months until I really had time to do all of this. So the car was likely going to be sitting for about 3 months or so. So the question I had was, is this the car that I'm going to keep long term? Is it time to do a 911 engine swap? Those kind of questions just started popping up. And as is often the case, my wife was very helpful in thinking through all this stuff. I started researching things such as what an engine swap in California entails. And some of that was simply that if I swapped it to a 911 engine, I talked to multiple people. Some people had no problems. Go before the state referee because of the smog laws here being pretty strict, and as long as you do the right year and a bunch of stuff like that, you can make it work. However, I also had other people who had done the swap who ended up having a really, really hard time getting it to pass smog, and you haven't yet been able to do that. So with all this in mind, I decided to list it on the Facebook Marketplace is what I used. There's Auto Trader, there's a bunch of different ways you can sell it. I thought, well, let's check the Facebook Marketplace. I've never used it before. Well, I got over 60 responses from different people. Now, of these, of course, some people are just like, oh, is it there? And then you don't hear anything from them. But there are probably a good 20 that were interested, like very, very interested in this car. So the good news is if you do have a 986 Porsche Boxster and you're thinking at all of selling it, especially if it's in good running condition, looks like there's a market for you. So my thought was I'll put it on the marketplace and just see, does it sell? The car's going to be sitting for a little bit until I get the time and have gathered all of the parts that I would need to do all this work. So let's see, do I get a fair price for it? And if I do, then maybe it's time to move on to the next car. And here's reason number 3, garage space. I have limited garage space. I've only right now got a 2-car garage. And I happen to live in the per capita car theft capital of the world. So it's kind of important you park your car in the garage. In fact, from moving from the central coast of California to where I live now, my car insurance more than doubled for the same two cars I had at the time. One of them was the Boxster. So knowing I had planned to get another Porsche in the fairly near future, looking at a few different models of Porsche sports cars, I needed another spot in the garage or to empty that spot. Eventually, I'm planning to buy a house with a 3-car garage if I can find one. There aren't a ton in this area is part of the problem. Most of them have 2-car garages. And obviously, I don't want to park anything outside. So the thought was, if it sells, is that time to go move up to the next Porsche? Eventually, if I get the 3-car garage, I did want to get, now the good thing is my wife doesn't watch these videos, so I don't have to worry about saying this, but I do plan on getting my wife a 991 Targa. It's a car she really wants. Just waiting for depreciation to kick in a little more, but probably in the next 5 years, thinking of getting her that for a birthday present. If I can find the 3-car garage, I have room for one more Porsche. So it's as simple as garage space for that. So selling the Boxster, it was kind of a bittersweet thing. The car is going all the way to Holland. The guy who bought it, what he does is he buys cars here in California. He buys them for a fair price, and then he ships them to Holland, and he buys cars with needs that he can fix up. That way he can make a little more money. And then it's going to go to Holland because then it's a California car, rust-free, things of that nature. And just the words California car tend to command a slight premium. And so that's what he does. He sells California cars in the Netherlands. So if you happen to live in Holland, there's a chance you could buy my old Porsche Boxster. So my Boxster was a very dependable car. For 6 years, had almost no problem. Their car had been extremely dependable, but it's getting close to 100,000 miles, and so you got to assume things are going to start popping up, which isn't a big deal if it's your long-term dream car. And I had thought I would keep it and have it alongside more cars, but the realization of mainly garage space and what it would entail to have, you know, a Boxster and a 911 and potentially another 911 or a Cayman or whatever all these things end up being, the realization was it wasn't going to fit with the space I had, unfortunately. So now the search begins for the next Porsche. So here's what I'm thinking, and I'll have more in-depth videos on this, but what I'm looking at right now are either an early 996, like a 1999, still cable-driven throttle body. Now, it's not an big interior upgrade from it, and the styling's about the same as what I had in my old Boxster, but I didn't mind. Some people do, but I didn't mind that much. But you get an extra 100 horsepower, and what I would like is a coupe and a 6-speed if I go that route with the 1999. So it may take a little bit of time because I am going to be a bit of a picky buyer. The other options are a 987 Cayman S. I found a few that are good now. They do have the internal IMS bearing, although it's extremely low rate of actual failure. There's a lot of fear out there, but I haven't seen a lot of actual failures. You're more likely to spin a rod bearing if you take it on the track because of oil starvation, which tends to be the bigger issue with these Cayman S's. The other one is a 997.1 Carrera and possibly a Carrera S. I've seen a couple in my price range that were Carrera S's. Now all of these I'd like a manual car. I don't want a Tiptronic, or in post 2009 cars, if you get the .2s, which a few are in my price range. By the way, my price range that I'm looking to spend is under 40,000. But I'm okay with spending half of that and getting something for 2025 if it's what I want. I don't have to max out my budget, right? If I can find the car I want, I'm great with spending less. So unfortunately, the Boxster's gone, but there will be a 911 or a Cayman S in my future of some sort. You know, I might be able to find a 997.2 or a 987.2 that's manual transmission, although most of them aren't. I haven't found one yet in my price range, and we'll see what it is. So thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. That way you can watch all the videos. You can find out what I do end up buying. I'm driving a minivan until then, and that's not fun. So this can't last too long. I gotta buy one as soon as I find a good one in my price range. And beyond this, with every subscription, a donation will be made in your name to the Buy a Middle-Aged Man a 911 Fund. His name's David. That car will be in my garage, and trust me, I need all the help I can get to get this one. And now get down in the comments, let us know, what should I buy? Should I buy a 997.1, 987.1, a 996, early 996? The advantage there is serviceable IMS bearing versus the others that aren't. Or just wait and get a 997.2, which is probably the answer I would tell anyone else that's doing it, but you know, it's more entertaining if there's a bit of risk. So if you like this video, make sure to give a big thumbs up. If you didn't like it, you know, there's other videos on the internet. You don't have to bother doing anything else. And for all of my current subscribers and regular viewers, thanks so much. Your support is great, and you really do make this possible and fun. And with that, we'll see you next time, hopefully in a Porsche instead of this.